Since the dawn of the GAA in 1884, the telling of its stories have been just as important as the sports. Through the years, heroes and matches have been immortalised, inspiring generation after generation. But some of its most important stories have also gotten lost or turned into legend. And in this series, we will explore some of the GAA's most fascinating forgotten tales, separating rumour from reality and myth from the truth that is often more amazing than the fiction. I'm Michael Foley.
And I'm Ciaran O'Hara.
So join us for Over the Bar, exploring the histories of the GAA.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Over the Bar, the Gaelic Games History podcast. We're into part 2 of a mini-series where the question we asked, or the question we posed, or I posed to Michael was, who was the first player manager to win an All-Ireland? And as revealed in part 1, the answer was Tony Hanahoe. And when last you joined us, so previously on Over the Bar, the Gaelic Games History podcast, Tony Hanahoe had taken over from the legendary Kevin Heffernan. He had led the Dubs to a back-to-back success in Sam Maguire Cups, and he had been pivotal as captain player manager in doing so. And in my estimation, as I mentioned, had been critical in the scoring of the goals against Kerry in particular, which made all the difference. So, Michael, that's the recap. Where are we going next?
Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, captain, player, manager, All-Ireland winner, first dub to captain 2 All-Ireland teams in a row, or 2 All-Ireland teams. So, yeah, I mean, for Tony Hanahoe, for the Dubs themselves, and for anybody connected to the Dubs, the fans, everybody, I mean, they are at peak now. I mean, they are at the summit. I mean, they rule football, you know, from sea to shining sea. All anybody can envisage now is years of Dublin dominance. Con Houlihan in the evening
was
press.
Con Houlihan asking for Dublin to be split in 2?
No, he was enjoying the pageantry and watching on from the canal end away down to the hill and seeing it all unfold in front of him. Con's thing always was that the Dubs would be invincible when they were able to kick long-range scores. That was his thing about the team of the 70s. And by the end of 1977, coming into 78, he reckoned that they were as close to invincible as made no difference. Now, of course, we know when you look back now at the broad sweep of history that this is peak Dub. This is the ultimate moment for them. And to illustrate that, let me take you to a restaurant in Dublin City around November 1977 to the Mirabeau, which was run by Sean Kinsella, who was, I suppose, at the time was a kind of a celebrity chef, I suppose, really.
The Gordon Ramsay of his day.
Without the swearing and the general unpleasantness, yes.
Are you certain of that?
I think I'm pretty... I have a memory of Sean Kinsella being in newspapers, newspaper columns and things like that. He seems a perfectly pleasant chap to me, anyway, as is my memory of him. Anyway, we are in the Mirabeau. It's a gathering of Dublin footballers and the Dublin management and their backroom staff and the media. It's a dinner for everybody. It's a celebration dinner. Imagine, isn't this just wonderful?
What
we all come
odd
together.
bedfellows.
We break bread, or in this case, we break fish together. So we are there. It is opulent. It is beautiful. The wine is flowing. People are having great fun. George Melly, the great jazz singer, the great British jazz singer, calls in especially to shake hands with these dubs he's been told so much about. Raymond Smith, the great old Sunday Independent journalist, is sitting in the corner, and
Go
he
Congo.
notes that, good old Congo notes that Dave Hickey attempts an operatic aria in Italian with Paddy Cullen and Alan Larkin backing him. Jimmy Keaveney is giving flight to the rare old Dublin wit. He's talking about he can't believe he's forgotten his spear to eat these king-sized prawns. Paddy Cullen sings a self-composed song about the tribulations of the goalkeeper who concedes 3 goals. And in the middle of all of this, we have the great hands across the ocean moment when Ray Tracy and Eamon Dunphy, at that time of Shamrock Rovers, arrive in the Mirror Ball.
Baby.
Now, you see what's happening. It's like the ultimate. It's the amount of brilliant hair, sideburns, flares, well-dressed people, singing songs, just having a wonderful time. Ray Tracy sings a ballad about the liberties that everybody loves. And there's a picture in the newspaper of Tony Hanahoe himself pouring what's described as a 150-pound bottle of Moët champagne into Sam Maguire. Now,
I dare to say that there has never been a bottle of Moët poured into the Sam prior to this.
It is truly, truly, truly a magnificent spectacle. And when you think about it, this is the vision we have of the dubs. You know, this is the glamorous dubs, the hype-driven dubs, the charismatic, endlessly interesting dubs. But I think just for what it's worth, because people listening to this might be going, so cocky and so this and so that and so city and all the rest of it. All of their success is rooted in real humility. The parallels between the dubs of the 70s in terms of how they prepared
I was about
and the
to say.
dubs and the Jim Gavin dubs are incredible, even down to things like the media side of things. Now, what I've just described there sounds like, it was an open door policy. They're having dinner with journalists. That's of its time. When it came to it, Hanahoe was just as careful and considered and, kind of cautious around the media as Jim Gavin and others in the modern era have been, Desi Farrell and Pat Gilroy before them all. So, I don't want necessarily people to get the impression that these guys were completely gung-ho. After they won the 74 All-Ireland, which was the great breakthrough All-Ireland, they considered themselves, we got to be too cocky, we got to kind of quieten it down. But at this point, at the end of 77, they're talking, at this dinner, they're talking to the reporters. They're obviously asking them about, well, what's the ambition to 3 in a row? And they just feel like, look, we're in a really good place. We don't think it's beyond us. Why wouldn't we just push on now? We have, everything is in place to push on and really create. I mean, it's already a groundbreaking empire. Now we can really, really build something that could last a decade or more,
And in the spirit of the great 1970s TV drama, Meanwhile in Kerry.
Meanwhile in Kerry, I'd imagine they are out with their spears trying to skewer raw fish off the coast of Bannistrand, and Paddy's down there grabbing fish with his bare hands out of Ventry Bay. It's all, they're just sitting going, right, how do we catch these guys? Now, as we said in episode 1, the Dublin Kerry saga is probably something we need to go into in detail, probably in another series, Ciaran, really. But while the guys in Dublin are having the time of their lives, Kerry are below, kind of just ruminating on everything that's not gone right in the previous 2 years. And Mick O'Dwyer is obviously also looking at these amazing young players that are getting a little bit older and a little bit more seasoned and a little bit hardier. And he's looking at Bomber Liston and he's saying, you're a bit of a project player for me. I could make a full back or full forward. I could make a full forward out of you that could really, really work against the Dubs. And all these things are happening, and they're getting fitter and they're hardier and they're tougher. And we see that as the relationship goes through 78. But from the Dublin side of things, a couple of things that caught my eye as we go into 1978. The medal ceremony, when they got their medals, was in February 78. And that doubled as a farewell to Kevin Moran. Kevin Moran was off to Manchester United. So he was there where he was given a little presentation. I think it was like a silver salver he was given by the players or something like that. Of course it was. It's it's these fantastically erudite dubs. It's a piece of it's a piece of silver. He goes
It's the
off.
claret jug from the Open.
It's the claret jug, the actual one. We had this discussion in the last episode, Ciaran. I was just positing the theory that there's no doubt that Tony Hanahoe was in charge alongside Larkin Redmond and Donald Colford, the selectors. But Kevin Heffernan was always around. He was always in the ether. And indeed, he's at the medal presentation as well in February 78.
Again,
I know you think this is all entirely normal.
There is nothing unusual in any of this. The guy wishes his own... Like, this is just the general checking in on his old troops.
Right.
Occasionally imparting a bit of wisdom, should it be wanted, to the new officer in command.
I think you're being... I look, all of this makes perfect sense, but let's just see how it plays out. I mean, for one thing, by the way, I don't think his troops were particularly enamored at the idea of the old general coming back. I think they were still... Some of them were still a bit annoyed that he went away at all. Not that Hanahoe was doing a bad job, but just in the way that Heffernan managed it. But anyway, on we go through the winter of 77 into the spring of 1978, into Tony Hanahoe's second year as player-manager. This was not a temporary arrangement now. We're continuing on with it.
He's the boss. He's the gaffer.
Boss.
The buck stops there.
Absolutely. Absolutely echoes as Steve Staunton there. But luckily Tony Hanahoe's managerial career went in an entirely different direction to that particular one. By the spring of 78, by April 78, Dublin have made the league final. They're up against Mayo in the final. It's interesting to note that the week before that final, in middle April, there was a story in the newspapers about Kevin Heffernan. You might remember he was put as chairman of a kind of an employment task force by the government in 77. It was a pretty high-powered and a pretty pressurized job given the state of affairs in the various dole offices around the country at the time. But there was a big story about his £20 million jobs plan being spiked by striking unions. So, again, this goes back to the whole theory about why Heffernan left. Heffernan was frying enormously big fish at this point in his
so he might have
career.
Needed the spear that Jimmy had.
Well, I think he could. I think he wouldn't have minded
at the dinner.
Possibly impaled a few union heads. All right, yeah, just get some work done. But anyway, that's an entirely other business. We don't have time to go into the politics of all of that. Sunday, April 23rd, 1978, Dublin win the league title against Mayo. Again,
the league specialists. Just making sure that's in there.
Yeah, from about 40 odd years before they were the league specialists. And I don't want to labour the point, Ciaran, but I'm just going to say that Hefo was in the crowd in the lower Cusack.
Good seats.
Well, quite close to the Dublin dugout. Again, I'm not saying that he was, having any influence on matters, but he was there. And it is around this time that he makes it known after the league final that he would like to come back.
In what capacity?
So it appears that he just wants to come back into the management, but I think we all know when you have a character of his capacity, of his enormous ambition, and of his personality, that he is the kind of guy that if he's in a management team, it's not going to be long before he resumes his old job, basically, as manager. Initially, the players are not unanimous in their support of the idea of Heffernan being allowed to come back in. Dublin County Board, at this stage, I would say that Dublin County Board, given that Heffernan unilaterally left the job, having Jimmy Gray, the Dublin County Chairman, had an inkling it was going to happen. But he left the job, and then suddenly Hanahoe was sort of presented as the next manager without the Dublin County Board going through their due processes and looking like they were actually making the decisions around here. I'd say at this stage, it's just kind of going, well, look, we're winning All Irelands. They seem to know what they're doing in there. If they want Kevin back, let them have him back. We're just going to we're just going to sit back and just watch the history unfold in front of us.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly, and don't even try to get near it because you might just press the wrong button and it blows up.
Love the free episodes of Over the Bar? Then take your passion further with the Cordia Club membership. For €5 a month, you'll unlock bonus series and member-only shows, hear the podcast first and ad-free, and get behind-the-scenes access through detailed notes, a newsletter, and Q&As. It's the ultimate GEA history experience, curated by Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara just for you. Upgrade your listening, support the show. Join today at overthebar.club.
In terms of how Tony Hanahoe saw the idea of Kevin Heffernan coming back, you can imagine. I mean, there would theoretically be a part of him that would have gone, well, you kind of left me high and dry, even though they're club mates. Heffernan had gone on record many times to say that Hanahoe was the most influential player in the squad. Their relationship was rock solid. But at the same time, he left Hanahoe an enormous job to do, which he did excellently well. They retained their All-Ireland.
And if I flip that on the other side, though, like, this is the guy who gave me the opportunity in the first place. You know, if I take the positives in this, Kevin left. He gave me a great opportunity. I seized it. Now he'd like to come back in, but I'm the boss, so as grateful as I am for the opportunity, I do dictate the terms of how he returns.
And I think that the core of your point there is exactly how Hanahoe saw it. Because remember that even this type of player he was, as we spoke about in the first episode, very selfless. He is, even though he's an enormously talented player and an incredibly cerebral player, probably operating at levels far beyond the average player in the mid-70s, he's entirely a team player. So he will do whatever is the right thing for the group. And in this context, he would see Heffernan coming back as the right thing for the group. He was quoted some years later saying, genuinely, if I thought that he did want to be involved again, talking about Heffernan, he was entitled to be. He said, I'm not sure what way it went down with the players. There was a bit of division, but not between he and I. So the St. Vincent's men, Heffernan, Hanahoe, they're walking in lockstep here. Like, they both have the same outlook on this. I mean, it's not for the individually ego thing, it's for the greater good.
Yes, it's the selflessness again. It's I think this is going to benefit us, so it doesn't matter how it impacts my autonomy.
It strikes me as well that we mentioned in the previous episode that Hanahoe had come in for some criticism of his playing performance through 1977. He had won an All-Star in 76. 8 Dubs won All-Stars in 77. He was not one of them. He's at the back end of his career now. He's 32 in 1978. So he gives him an opportunity, obviously, if Heffernan wants to come back in, to kind of concentrate a little bit more on that side of things. So
practically now, how is this going to look? Is Tony Hanahoe going to be on the field of play and Kevin Heffernan is in the dugout?
So in practical terms, Ciaran, and I'm not talking about how it actually works, I'm just talking about the public view of this. Nothing changes. Kevin Heffernan is never announced as being back with the Dubs. It just does not come up throughout the entire season. As far as the newspaper readers and everybody outside of Dublin, probably outside of Donny Carney, where they train in Parnell Park, Tony Hanahoe is the player manager.
If this was the modern age, this would just be slipped out in some press release 3 months later.
Absolutely. And it effectively, that's what kind of happens here as well. I'll get onto that now in a second. I mean, in practice, Heffernan just starts turning up to training again. And it seems to be a very seamless transition. How it works from night to night is difficult to kind of tease out at this point. I mean, Heffernan was never really inclined to talk about this kind of stuff. It's not, as I say, from a public point of view, it wasn't announced. It wasn't like he came back and he was on the line. The only time he actually made an appearance managing the Dubs in the summer of 1978 was when they played the Irish rugby team in a charity soccer match. That was the only time that he was actually seen on the line as Dublin football manager. But
Was this for an episode of Superstars or something?
I know, isn't it just wonderful? It was just that kind of time where you could get the Irish rugby team, Moss Keane and the lads, rock into, I don't know where, Dalymount Park or something, and the Dubs in the middle of their season, turn out for a soccer match.
Was Ray Tracy reffing with Eamon Dunphy on the line?
Tell you what, I've no doubt he was serenading both teams with another ballad before the game started, and no doubt afterwards in the bar as well. But that was the only time that Heffernan was really seen on the line. So we move along through the season. Dublin are rolling. They win Leinster, All-Ireland semi-final against Down. And finally, after that, and it's a good old drubbing they give Down as well. So they're looking really good. They're still looking really strong. Someone asked the question about Heffo. John O'Shea in the Evening Press asks the question, is he involved? He asked Dublin County Board. And
the cute Kerry man in advance of the All-Ireland final.
Oh, I tell you, he held that question all summer until it mattered. So the county board said Heffernan was being asked to be part of the scene on All-Ireland final day. So they didn't say he had been involved, but they conceded that he would be involved for the final. Eugene McGee in the Sunday Press. Then at this stage, Eugene McGee is Offaly manager as well. He describes the return of Heffernan. He says it's a masterstroke. And Heffernan is now being reported as being seen at minor football sessions and senior football sessions. So he's kind of feeding a little bit into both, it seems. So I guess he, to what degree he controlled the team in the run into the 78 final, I would imagine that it was still Hanahoe's team and it was still Larkin, Redmond and Donald Colfer with Heffernan throwing in his 2 cents. I would have thought at that stage. That would seem to me the best and most prudent use of resources. And I mean, I'm sure if Heffernan had a strong view on something, I mean, look at what the man had done to this point in his footballing career. He's going to be considered and listened to. I doubt if there was any issues around that. But of course, in the 1978 All-Ireland final, as we'll remember.
So the 78 All-Ireland final, I mentioned meanwhile in Kerry, they've been stewing for a year. They've got the younger team. They're coming to the boil nicely. The 1978 All-Ireland final is a catastrophe.
An utter catastrophe. Owen Liston is unleashed at full forward in all his technicolor glory as a full forward. We have the Mikey Sheehy goal where Paddy Cullen comes out of his goal, is deemed to have fouled someone. I'm thinking when you look at the footage back, and we'll put it in the show notes, obviously, it looks like he may have fouled the ghost of a Kerry forward from the 1920s or something. I cannot see a foul anywhere. The referee, Seamus Aldridge, has his back to the play as Mikey Sheehy puts the ball down and lobs Paddy Cullen, and the ball goes into the net. And
backpedaling at a rate of knots to try and get back on his line.
Backpedaling ferociously. What was Con Houlihan's great old line about? It was like about a woman running back into the kitchen when she smells that her bread is burning in the oven or her buns are burning or something like that. Anyway, it's a catastrophe for Dublin. Kerry are, of course, enraptured because now they're back again. The rubber that appeared to be dead after the 2-1, we'll say Kerry winning 75, Dublin winning 76 and 77. Now the conversation is open again.
We're at 2-2.
We're at 2-2. And it's interesting in the context of Heffernan coming back. Heffernan's in the dressing room after the game and he's asked, well, what do you think of that? And he is not, for a man who spent his life seeking to first match and then crush Kerry without fear or prejudice, he doesn't strike me, certainly in his public comments, as somebody who feels that this is a pivotal moment in their relationship. He says afterwards, we were knocked off our pedestal by Kerry before, referring to 75, but we bounced back again. This is just a temporary lapse. Now that's 1978 All-Ireland football final. The next time that Dublin beat Kerry in championship football is the 2011 All-Ireland football final. It is an enormous moment in the history of both counties. Now, people will always argue this. Well, they didn't actually meet that much in the time between those, and that's true. And there's reasons for that, but it still remains. It was that long before Dublin won again. In terms of Heffernan's status and Tony Hanahoe's status. In the autumn of 1978, after the All-Ireland final was done and dusted, the Dublin County Board kind of tidied up Heffernan's role. Well, tidied up might be stretching it a bit. They described him as a special advisor to the Dublin team going forward. Is that clear enough for you, Ciaran?
Yeah, that sounds, uniquely Peter Mandelson-esque, the minister without portfolio.
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's a portfolio without beginning or end, really. It can be whatever it needs to be at a given stage of the season. But from Tony Hanahoe's perspective, there are other issues unfolding. So the week after the 78 final, he meets Vincent Browne, of all people, who was then writing for McGill magazine in the Clarence Hotel in Dublin, for an interview.
Which was not then owned by U2.
It was not owned by U2. Not sure who owned it. To discuss what went wrong the previous Sunday. And now, for most players, you would say it's a bit knee-jerk maybe to come up, to meet a journalist a couple of days after an All-Ireland when things haven't really been processed and so on. But when it comes to Tony Hanahoe, we know that nothing is done without due measure and consideration. So this is a very considered, conscious decision to sit down with Vincent Browne of McGill magazine and walk through where the game was lost. So we will set aside the kind of tactical aspect and so on of it and just hone in on one particular issue, which was the referee. He was
the aforementioned Seamus Aldrich from Kildare.
Seamus Aldrich from Kildare, who was a well-established referee at that stage and became a very well-known administrator in the years afterwards in Kildare and beyond in National administration. But so he's asked very directly, there has been a lot of criticism of the referee Seamus Aldrich in this game. Vincent Browne asks him, what were your views of his performance? Tony Hanahoe replies, I personally objected to the referee before the game, and I had objected to him before the Offaly game. That he's probably referring there, I would say, to the Leinster Championship game against Offaly that year. So Vincent Browne asks, why? On the grounds of prejudice, it now must be apparent to most people that there was one common factor in the All-Ireland final, which we lost, the game against Offaly at Portlaoise, which we nearly lost, the game in New York against Kerry, which we lost, which, by the way, was it was a tournament game in the earlier part of the season, and it was a bloodbath. And it is mentioned often by the Kerry players ever since as the day when they finally felt they stood up to the Dubs physically and every which way. They won the fight and they won the match, and they gave them, the message that whatever was coming down the track, they weren't backing off a single step. So that was a huge game for Kerry. And Tony Hanahoe continues, and the bizarre game against Wexford in the first round of the championship last year. You might remember, Ciaran, we mentioned that in the last episode. This is where there was 2 guys sent off, 8 bookings, which was a lot for the time. And there was criticism at the time of Seamus Aldrich's performance, that he's quite a fussy referee, that maybe that kind of caused a lot of tension, a lot of bother. He's asked then subsequently in the interview, like, what decisions in particular did you object to in the final against Kerry? Tony Hanahoe says he just objected generally to his interpretation of the rules of the game. And he's not just referring to the incident around the goal, Paddy Cullen goal and all that.
Love GEA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
Immediately. Red flags.
Vincent Browne's got a scoop.
He's happy, but nobody else is happy. Like, the GA are up in arms. This is a huge.
This would be a scandal in any era. This is bringing the game into disrepute type stuff if it were in sport now. So I imagine this made quite a stir.
It was massive. It was front page news at the time. You had Heffernan coming out and defending Tony Hanahoe and so on, in terms of his comments and so on. Hanahoe was initially given a 1-month suspension. Now, even the hearing, it's kind of, everybody is there and they're going, why are we here? This is just the worst case we've had to deal with this is awful. He's pulled in front of what was called at the time the GAA's Activities Committee. And the GAA president, Paddy McFlynn, chaired the meeting. And essentially there was two
The
options.
activities committees.
I know, yeah. It's great, isn't it? The options
Once this
for Hanahoe,
meeting was done, they were going to discuss rounders next.
yeah, activities. So the options for Tony Hanahoe were very simple: apology or suspension. And there was no way that he was going to apologise for his comments because he truly believed what he said. They take a break during the hearing when it's very clear that Hanahoe isn't taking a step back. And Paddy McFlynn kind of pulls him aside and he says, I'm going to have to suspend you now. And he says, I don't understand, he said, Tony, why you said it. And Jimmy Smith, who was the committee secretary, is standing with them. And he turns to Paddy and he said, because he probably meant it, Paddy. So, it's a point of principle for Hanahoe. Like he feels that Dublin have been treated poorly by a referee that they don't have a whole lot of time for anyway, and that this is contributing directly to, like a wrecking ball blow into the side of this empire that was being built. So he gets his 1 month suspension. But what do you think Tony Hanahoe would do in this situation? Would he say mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa, and go back and just sit around for a month in the autumn, or is he going to appeal? What do you think?
I can see an appeal here.
Oh, yeah, I made you even pause for a millisecond there. There's an appeal coming. But more than that, the hearing is taking place at the weekend. The following day, 1 month suspension, he rocks up for a league game against Kildare.
Has he lodged his appeal already?
He has appealed.
Okay, so he can play until his appeal is heard, surely.
No, he can't, apparently. Not back then, he couldn't. So he turns up on the pitch. The referee for the game looks at him and says, I didn't expect to see you here today. He says.
The fact that Kildare are the opponents as well is somewhat provocative.
It's incredible.
Seamus Aldridge is probably in the ground there somewhere.
So suddenly, a 1 month ban gets increased by 6 months to 7 months because he has played a game while under suspension. There's talk of Dublin going on strike until the ban is lifted. As I say, Kevin Heffernan is straight out defending Hanahoe's right to, express his opinion, and then his right to appeal and his right to play while the appeal is being heard and ongoing. That suspension is initially appealed to the management committee of the GAA, and the ban is reduced back to a month again, and that's where it stays, the month. Okay, so
it's a GAA solution to a GAA problem.
Absolutely. So that is where it's left.
But I mean, talk about setting up a siege mentality for the following year.
Absolutely, 100%. Like, keep in mind that it's a youngish Kerry team. It's a Kerry team now coming to the boil in a big way. It's an old Dublin team now, and they're probably starting to feel their age now that they've been knocked sideways by Kerry in an All-Ireland final. But as we go into 1979, Ciaran, Tony Hanahoe is still player manager. We're now into year 3 of this situation. Even though Kevin Heffernan is there as a special advisor, Hanahoe is still player manager. But even though that is the case, Hefo is now seen as the manager. Like, I mean, in the media and everywhere else, he's seen as the boss again. There was one conspiracy theory that has kind of taken flight more so since the time than at the time. That it was, and the theory is that Heffernan was ill, that he had to pull away for health reasons. I think that theory might have got mixed up a little bit with what happened in the spring of 1979. Heffernan had a cardiac episode that required a spell in hospital. He was fine. He came right back again. But looking at the evidence from the time, I think that
people have conflated the two things.
I think so.
Well, they don't take a backward step in Leinster the next year. I mean, we've already referenced Eugene McGee is with Offaly, and Offaly are making strides, but they still come through the Leinster Championship and they defeat Offaly in the Leinster final.
Exactly. And I mean, we'll possibly come back to the Offaly story some other time. Offaly are on it's like steps of a stairs for Offaly. They get to a couple of Leinster finals, 78, 79. They're getting closer and closer to Dublin all the time. But the Dubs are still a little bit ahead.
And in the meantime, if people want, they can just buy your book.
Oh, they could do that if they wanted to. The old Kings of September. It's a long time ago now. But anyway, that's we'll tell that story another time, I think. That's for another day. 79 to get to another All-Ireland final. Of course, it's Kerry again. So we are now again, it's kind of like the decider. It's 2-2. But if anything, the 79 victory for Kerry is even more decisive than the 78 one. And now,
if not on the scoreboard, more decisive.
But yeah, but it's Dublin look tired now. And, if you compare what Heffernan said in the 78 dressing room, where essentially this is just a blip, we'll get back to business again in 79, and we'll be right there with them, and we'll put them back on their box. Well, he didn't say we'll put them back on their box, but they're going to be in a scenario where they'll be really competitive and right there with Kerry. This time he's standing in a dressing room that's just silent after the game. And again, this is in keeping with the time. The reporters were in there and they were sitting on the benches with players, and there's silence. No one is saying anything. And Heffernan finally speaks and he says, "Forget it now, lads. There's nothing you can do about it. We've lost the match. The better team won, and I don't want to hear any excuses. Take your defeat as you take victory." So he's speaking like a boss. He's setting the tone there. But to me, compared to the more bullish comments of 78, there's a certain acceptance now, or a certain realization. I'm sure he's realized it before this, but that the team is in steady decline now. That the end is coming.
And I think there's a factor here as well, in that there are other teams on the rise. So we've mentioned Offaly. They beat Offaly by 2 points in the Leinster final. In the All-Ireland semi-final, they only beat Roscommon by 1 point. A team that's coming with Dermot Earley et al. In harness. And then, as you mentioned, in the final, Kerry defeat them 3-13 to 1-8.
Yes.
They've reached a point where probably now some regeneration is required going ahead. So does Kevin Heffernan just step back in as manager now?
Well, again, in September 79, he's officially described now as team advisor. So that hasn't really changed. It's still minister without portfolio. Going into 1980, Tony Hanahoe is still described as player manager, but he's not playing much now. As we go through, we haven't mentioned him in a while. I mean, he played through 79, but by the spring of 1980, he's not really featuring. There's talk of a hamstring injury. He goes the whole league without being seen. And he eventually plays the O'Byrne Cup final in April 1980. And he plays a Curran-Nakoska match, which was an old Easter tournament that was revived in that period. He plays against Galway. So he gets some football into the legs, but it's kind of hard to see him making the team. So he's a substitute for the championship. And in 1980, Dublin finally meet their Waterloo against Offaly in the Leinster football final. Offaly win the game, begin the journey to winning the 1982 All-Ireland, really. But it is striking to see from the 1979 Leinster football final, Dublin are down 8 players. They're down Paddy Cullen, Gay O'Driscoll, Sean Doherty, Pat O'Neill, Brian Mullins, who had been in a car accident, Tony Hanahoe on the subs, John McCarthy and Jimmy Keaveney. And suddenly you notice that in the totality of his career, when Tony Hanahoe started out with St. Vincent's in the early 60s, Kevin Heffernan was still on that team. Tony Hanahoe was a wing back and Kevin Heffernan was on that team. So he has played with Kevin Heffernan and he has been on a squad for Dublin with John O'Leary, the new goalkeeper in 1980. That is the span that we're talking about here. It's an incredible career.
Love GEA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
I mean, so influential, so long-lasting, and so impactful in every which way that we've kind of talked about over the last couple of episodes. He slips quietly into retirement in 1981, but he stays on as a selector. Heffernan is now the manager, and he stays on as a selector until 1986, when Heffernan sort of resigned them all. Effectively, he got rid of the whole management, not the Dublin County Board. He just said, "Oh, we're all resigning." And there was always a bit of speculation.
They deliver another All-Ireland in the meantime, though, in fairness.
They get one in 83, and they get to two more. They regenerate the team, and they get to two more All-Ireland finals after 83 against Kerry in 84 and 85. So, it's a very, very good regeneration job they do. The strange thing about 86 when they go is that Heffernan resigns them all, including Tony Hanahoe, when Tony Hanahoe would have looked to be the most obvious successor, certainly a very logical successor to Heffernan. It goes to Jerry McCall, who does a perfectly fine job. I mean, he's coming in to a situation, as you mentioned there, about teams coming forward. Meath are now coming forward in 1986. And they're going to win a couple of All-Irelands. But Dublin nick one against the head off them, a Leinster title in 89 under Jerry McCall. So that's a really good job done there. But then they run into a Cork team that have come forward because Kerry have gone back. So it's a funny period of time for Dublin in terms of other teams and just hitting brick walls. But in terms of Tony Hanahoe, that was effectively it for him with Dublin. 1986, as a selector with Heffernan, he was gone. Obviously stayed as a huge influence in terms of, Dublin football, in keeping that group together as well. The team of the 70s was always known as a very tight group, and Tony Hanahoe was absolutely central to maintaining those relationships and making sure
they're famous for their trips to Kerry for the Listowel races, their team holidays. Up until recent years, they go on team holidays.
It's fantastic. It is fantastic to see, and it's a testament to the culture again that Kevin Heffernan built, that was supported by key guys like Tony Hanahoe. And it's a tribute actually to Hanahoe's management that he was able to take that job on, manage his players who are also his friends and colleagues, and maintain those relationships all the way through their lives. It just speaks so much to the bond they had as players from the very, very get-go, that they had that link. Nothing was going to sunder them, because they all knew that if one broken link of the chain and everything falls. They were selfless. They were charismatic, as I've often said in this last couple of episodes. They were fascinating people. They were great footballers. And of them all, to me, and I wouldn't necessarily have said this before I started really looking into Tony Hanahoe's time as player manager. To me now, Tony Hanahoe stands head and shoulders above them all as arguably the most fascinating Dublin footballer of that era. It's just his influence and his effect on that period of time, and in effect, the entire GA itself, because of the massive influence that team had in its success. It's absolutely incredible. So to me, Tony Hanahoe is one of the major, major figures of the last 50, 60 years of the GA.
And it was a story worth telling over 2 episodes. I'll tell you that now. And if anybody out there, if you're responsible for the Wikipedia pages for All Ireland finals and you're listening, you need to correct the 1979 final entry, because the Dublin manager was one Tony Hanahoe, not Kay Heffernan.
Yeah, and that's the hill we'll die on. He deserves it. What an amazing achievement. Player, manager, captain, 1977.
And when we talk about him as a player, a great player.
A truly, truly great player. And again, a real pioneer in terms of the way he played that centre forward position, creating space for people and just showing that there's more than one way to play football and skin a Kerry cat.
Right, well, we've reached that point where I plead and implore with our listeners, to go to the place on the podcast player that allows you to rate a program, where it lets you pick a number of stars out of 5. Rate the series. Like the series. Like our social media accounts. But most importantly, share. Share the series with someone who you think will enjoy it. And if you yourself would like more, you could always join our Cordial Club, There's enough ads in the feed for you to know where to find it.
And you lose all those ads if you come across to the Cordial Club. Is that right?
That's correct. And you get early releases. Anyway, Mick, that was great. To all of you listening in your cars, homes, places of work, wherever you may be, thank you for giving us your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy.